We're going to go ahead and get started on these apples. Hello family, welcome back. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Vicki and you're with Grammy in the Kitchen. So I've got about 15 pounds of my 40 pounds of apples. Yes, we are eating them fresh also. So delicious. But I'm going to make applesauce from 15 pounds. I'm going to put that into the countertop slow cooker, the roaster right there. In this pot right here, I have a 1/4 cup of citric acid with some water. That's where we're going to soak them in so they can retain its color. So we need to peel and cut these into chunks. Remove the cores, put them in this pot, and then we're going to transfer it to that cooker with some water and let it slow roast. Come on in a little closer and I'll show you what we're doing. So I weighed out just a little bit over 15 pounds. The website for the Center of Home Food Preservation, I'll put a link below and show you where that's at. It says we need about 13 pounds to get 9 pints, because I do want to put these into pints. Now these are Gala apples I got from Azure Standard. I have a bowl here to put my scraps in. I got the pot with the citric acid water right there. Let's go ahead and get started. I do not have a peeler, so we are doing this all by hand. I'm going to peel it to get as little of the meat as possible, so we're just peeling the peels. This is going to take some time. I'm going to cut them in half, cut them in quarters. Then I'm going to put my knife at an angle so we can remove the core. That way we're just left with the 4 pieces of apples. I'm going to cut them in half and just cut them up into small chunks. Into the citric acid water. And we're going to do this 1 apple at a time so that they don't have time to oxidize. And they will stay nice and pretty color. Alright, so let me get all 15 pounds peeled, cut up into chunks, put into the citric acid water. Then I'll bring you right back when we are ready to put it into the countertop roaster and get this slow cooking. All right, that is the last of the apples. Perfect. Each time I've been putting apples in here, I've been stirring it to make sure that the new apples is getting that citric acid water on it, and they have retained its color. Beautiful. Now I have the big pasta strainer in the sink. I'm going to go ahead and drain this water and then get the countertop roaster ready for these apples. And that is 15 pounds of apples. I do want to use this as like a warming plate or a double boiler, because I will not be home to keep an eye on it, and I don't want them to scorch. So we're going to take the liner out, and we're just going to add water to the base. It's probably about a ½ inch deep. Put the apples back in and plug it, and I'm just going to put it on 200. And I'm just going to let that roast while I'm at work. The peels and the core I am going to turn into a homemade apple cider vinegar, but I don't have time right now. So we'll take care of this either this evening or tomorrow. I'm going to cover this with plastic wrap. And I'm just going to put this in the refrigerator till I have time to take care of it. I'm going to add 1 cup of water to the apples. That's just going to help it to release some of its own natural juices and get things moving. And for breakfast today, I made some brown sugar cinnamon oatmeal with some apples. So I'll put 1 of our apples in here. And that's what's for breakfast. We're going to eat our oatmeal. I'm going to wash these dishes, and then I got to run to work. The apples have been in this roaster for 23 hours. They're starting to cook down. I've had it on between 150 and 175 degrees, but I do want them to cook down just a little bit more. I've been stirring them for about every 2 or 3 hours. I'm just coming in here and stirring them. I have not added any sugar to it yet, because I want them all cooked down so I can taste it to see how much sugar I do need. So we're just going to let that continue to cook. And in the meantime, we can go ahead and get the rest of the apples peeled and sliced to get them ready to go in jars for apple pie filling. So I went ahead and weighed out 16 pounds of apples. Like I said, we have been eating these as fresh eating. And I have 3 apples left over. I'm going to go ahead and put that in the refrigerator so we can have this for fresh eating or oatmeal. So in this big stock pot, I have a 1/4 cup of citric acid with some cold water, so that as we're slicing them, we can put them in there and they would stay nice and bright color. I have the small stock pot to put our peels and cores in. Still have the peels and cores from yesterday when we did the apples for the applesauce. I'm going to combine those together, and we're going to make a homemade apple cider vinegar. Let me get these peeled, get them in that citric acid, and then we'll start on the apple pie filling sauce. So we're going to cut them in half and quarters. Put the knife at a 45-degree angle, cut the core. And now we're going to slice them. We're going to do about 1/8 of an inch thick. Somewhere between 1/8 and 1/4 inch. That'd be perfect. So about that thick into slices. Into the citric acid water. All right, let me get them all peeled and sliced and I'll bring you right back. Life got in the way. We put the applesauce apples in the countertop roaster 2 days ago. And it's been sitting on about 175, 200 since then. Haven't had time to get to it. Then we peeled all the apples for the apple pie filling yesterday. They're sitting in citric acid water in the refrigerator. Again, life got in the way. But I need to clear out my refrigerator with all the scraps. So that's what we're going to make, our apple scrap vinegar. So I'm using Berkey water, and all the recipes I've found says it's 2 tablespoons or 1/8 of a cup of sugar per quart. And we're doing a gallon, which is 4 quarts, so we need 1/2 cup of sugar. So we're going to put in 1/2 cup of sugar, and then I have 4 cups of water, 1 quart. We can always add more to it if we need it. And we just want to stir that until it dissolves. Now we could heat this up, dissolve the sugar, but then we would have to let it cool down. So I'm just doing it with cold water or room temperature water until it all dissolves. This is an organic cane sugar, and I have organic apple peels and cores and all the seeds. Now the way apple vinegar works, it's fermenting the apples. So any bacteria or anything that's on these apples will eat the sugar that's in this jar, and it will ferment, and that's where you get vinegar from. So we're basically fermenting apple peels and apple cores and apple seeds to turn it into vinegar. This takes about 30 days. We have to go in here and stir it, make sure that everything is moved around so we don't have no mold growing. All right, all the sugar has melted. Let's go ahead and start adding the peels and the cores. I might not need all of this, but whatever we don't use, we can always throw away, or we can make another gallon. We want to make sure we're pushing it down to get out any air bubbles. We want it tightly packed, and then we'll add more water to it if we need to. We want to make sure everything is submerged into water so no mold can grow. Let's add a little bit more water to it. So I have just something to push it down with. These are fermented weights. And now we would rather have something that will allow it to breathe, a cloth or a coffee filter, but I don't have like a canning ring that will fit this jar. So we're actually going to use the regular lid, and we need to make sure we are burping this and stirring it daily. Let me write today's date right on the lid. And then every day we need to take the lid off, then take the weight off, stir it some bit, just take a wooden spoon, go in there and stir it, put the weights back on, and put the lid back on. And we need to do that every day because it's going to ferment and cause gas, and gas will cause the lid to explode or the jar to break. So every day we need to be careful. Open it up, remove the weights, give it a good stir, put the weights back in, and then put the lid on. And this needs to go into a cool, dark place, and we need to check on it every day for the next 30 days. The rest of this, unfortunately, it's going to go to waste. I don't have enough jars, and I don't need that much vinegar, so we're just going to throw that away. Now we're going to go ahead and get started working on our apples for the apple pie filling. I measured all the apples, and I have 44 cups. I'm not sure how many quarts I'm going to get out of this, but that's how many apples. We do need to blanch them on the stove. I do have a pot of water. It's about halfway full, coming to a boil, so we can add the apples a little bit at a time, bring it back to a boil for 1 minute, and then take them out, and we're going to shock them in some cold water because they need to be blanched before we move on. If you notice when you're canning apples and it rises and then you have that syrup line at the bottom, chances are you didn't blanch your apples or you didn't blanch them long enough. Now there's going to be some rise, but this alleviates a lot of that. So I'm just waiting for that water to come to a boil, and then we're going to go ahead and get started on blanching these apples. As for the apples in the countertop roaster, I have not added sugar to it. I do want to take the stick blender and blend those really well, taste it to see how much sugar it needs. We are going to be water bathing both apples, the apple pie filling and the applesauce, so we're going to have to add lemon juice to raise the acidity of those apples. My apple pie filling I am doing without clear gel. Several reasons. One, I didn't want to have an additive in my apple pie filling. I'd rather add cornstarch or tapioca starch at the time I want to make the apples. I don't want it in the apple pie filling. Every recipe I found out there says you have to use clear gel. I did find a recipe, and it's from Krista Dowding. If I can find the link that I found this on, I'll put it in the description below. Hers calls for 24 cups of apples, 5 cups of sugar, 2 tablespoons of cinnamon, a half a teaspoon of nutmeg, a half a teaspoon of ginger, a quarter teaspoon of allspice, half a teaspoon of salt, 7.5 cups of water, and 1 cup of lemon juice. I don't have ground ginger, and I really don't care that much for ginger in my apple pie filling, so we're going to omit that. Now hers calls for 24 cups of apples. We have 44. I did the math, so our recipe is 1.83 of her recipes. So I went through and changed all the ingredients to equal 1.83% of her recipe. So 5 cups of sugar, I need 9.25. 2 tablespoons of cinnamon, we need 3.5. A half a teaspoon of nutmeg, we're going to need 1. A quarter teaspoon of allspice, we need a half. A half a teaspoon of salt, we need 1. 7.5 cups of water, we need 13.72. So we're going to do 13 3/4. 1 cup of lemon juice is 1 3/4 cups. But first, we have to get all these apples blanched. Waiting for the water to come to a boil, then we'll move on. I did bring out the 32 quart stock pot. That is what I'm going to be water bathing in, because my All-American canner only holds 7 quarts. Yes, you can water bath in a pressure canner, just don't lock the lid down and put the weight on it. But I know I can get more quarts in here and do a lot more in one batch. I do not have a rack that goes on the bottom of this, so I'm just going to put in 2 dish towels in the bottom, just so that my jars aren't sitting on that bottom on top of those burners. Just as long as we have a little bit of leeway at the bottom, we can get away with dish towels. How many quarts I can get in there? I don't know. We're going to find out together. I do have 13 quarts washed and rinsed. All we have to do is get those warm, but we can warm those while we're making the syrup to our apples after we blanch it. So once that comes up to a boil, we're going to start blanching. You know what they say, a watched pot never boils? Oh, so true. All right, so we've got the water boiling. This is one of our containers of sliced apples. Go ahead and get it in there and make sure we don't splash ourselves and get burnt. Okay, perfect. We want to bring this back to a boil and boil them for 1 minute, and then we'll shock it in some cold water. All right, it's up to a boil. We're going to count to 60. All right, now we're going to go ahead and remove these and put them in some cold water. Stop the cooking process. They are falling apart, but that's okay. That's my fault. I left it in the citric acid too long, but it'll still work. All right, now we're going to bring this water back to a boil, and then we're going to get another batch in there. All right, here's the second batch. And again, bring it to a boil. Boil for 1 minute. And then we'll do this until we're run out of apples. Okay, here's the blanched apples in the cold water. I'm gonna put them back into this pot, minus the water. And I'm gonna change this water out with fresh cold water. And when those apples are ready to come out, we can dump them in here, let them cool off, and then we can move on. So all the apples have been blanched. So I rinsed out this stock pot, and I have 13 3/4 cups of water. I have 9 1/4 cups of sugar, 3 1/2 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of nutmeg, a 1/2 teaspoon of allspice, and 1 teaspoon of salt. Turn the burner on. I want to make sure I get the sugar melted. Cinnamon, salt, nutmeg, and allspice mixed in. Not quite to a boil, but I just want to get everything cohesive. You can see the cinnamon and the allspice and the nutmeg just floating on the top. I need to get that mixed in. That's going to probably take about 5 minutes. That is the last of the apples. I have both of these pots full with blanched apples, and I'm not sure how many quarts that is, maybe 7 or 8. But in the meantime, we can go ahead and get our large stock pot ready for the jars. So I have 2 clean dish towels. I'm just going to put that on the bottom. Make sure the whole bottom is covered, just like that. And now I need to put water in here, start getting that on the stove to heat up. Lemon juice. So if I got the lemon juice, I need to put that in there. And we do need to add 1 3/4 cups of lemon juice. Go ahead and add that to our sugar water mixture. I have the dish towels and water in the 32 quart stock pot on medium heat. If we need to add more water, because we are water bath canning, once we put our contents in the jar, put the lids on, the water has to be more than an inch above the top, submerged in the water. So if we need to add more water, we will. Once it comes back to a boil, once we put our jars in there, we're going to process it for 25 minutes. Turn the stove off, let it sit for 5 minutes increments with the lid on, with the lid off, and then we can take them out. I don't want to bring the sugar water to a boil, but I do want it hot. Now the reason I'm not putting the apples in while we're heating up the water, the sugar water, it's because we've already blanched them and they're going to be cooked again when we water bath them. I don't want to cook them for 3 different times. So once this comes up to almost a boil, maybe just a slight simmer, we're going to throw our apples in there, put them in there for 1 minute, and then we're going to go ahead and start filling up these jars. And I also have this burner on with the 32 quart stock pot so it can heat up also. Hot jars, hot contents, hot canner. We got a lot of dishes to do, family, but that's okay. We don't mind doing dishes if we know we're going to have a homemade, healthy alternative compared to store-bought. All right, we are starting to come to a simmer. Let's go ahead and add the apples. We're going to try not to splash ourselves. That is 1 pot. And the second pot. Ooh, family, haha. Let's take some of those out. That pot is not big enough. We will have a mess. I overestimated the capacity of this pot, but that's okay. We'll take some of them out. Get that stirred in there. Let it come back up to a little simmer. We're going to simmer it for 1 minute. And as for the apples in this pot, we're just going to go ahead and add it to some of these jars. Just a little bit in each one. I only have 7 wide mouth jars, and the rest are going to be regular mouth, but that's okay. We're not putting a thickener in here, so it should come out fairly well. All right, that is good. Let's go ahead and start filling our jars with our apple pie filling. I do have a slotted spoon, so we can make sure we get apples in here and not just fill it up with juice. Then we'll go back and add the sugar water. And we're looking for a 1-inch headspace. Pause the video right now. Write in the comments, how many quarts do you think we can get from 44 cups of sliced apples? And that was pre-blanching. I don't know how many cups it was after we blanched them, but leave me a comment. I'm not even going to guess. I am just curious to see what you think. Oh, it smells like apple pie up in here. Family, I wish you were here. All right, let's go back with the ladle and let's get some of this delicious sugar, cinnamon, allspice, nutmeg water. We do have to go back and burp it, but we got this. Now, did you write your answers down? How many quarts are we going to get? Oh, it's not Grammy's kitchen unless we make a mess. So we're going to take our debubbler. Try not to disturb the apples. Just go down the side. Just make sure we get all the bubbles out. So I'm putting the debubbler in and then pushing it towards the center at the top. I'm putting it in and then just pushing it towards the center. That way we're not disturbing those apples, but we are getting all the bubbles out. Perfect. Push all these apples down. Make sure they're at an inch headspace. And you can see some of them are pretty low. We need to add some more liquid. Right to the bottom of that rim. Just give it another deep bubble. So I have some white distilled vinegar, a paper towel. We want to wipe the rim to make sure we don't have any sugar or apples to prohibit from making a seal. Brand new, clean 4-jar lids, my favorite. In the description below, you're going to see a link. You can receive 10% off your first order from 4-jar lids if you use the discount code GRAMMY10. Fingertip tight. Oop, I short myself one. Oh no, I didn't. There it is. All right, so that's 7 quarts. And now we're going to go ahead and put this in the canner to do a water bath. So we're going to put these 7 in. Make sure they're on that dish towel and not sitting on the bottom of this pot. So I was able to get 9 jars. So I have 7 wide mouths and 2 regular mouths, covered by an inch of water. And we need to get this up to a boil, and then we have to keep it boiling for 25 minutes, and then we can turn it off. And we still have more apples in that pot that we still need to take care of. This is a great opportunity to get all these apple dishes done, clean, put away, and we still need to work on that applesauce. We're getting there, family. Life gets in the way. We can do this. The canner finally came up to a boil. I'm gonna set the timer for 25 minutes. Then we'll turn the burner off and let it sit until it cools down a bit, and we'll do the whole 5 minutes increments. We still have apples in the small saucepan. Well, it's a big saucepan, but the smaller of the 2 that we still need to can. We still need to puree the applesauce, taste it for sweetness, add sugar, and we need to get that in there. I'm thinking about going ahead and can the leftover apple pie filling in quarts with that applesauce that's going to be in pints together. I know the quart needs to water bath for 25 minutes, and the applesauce in pint jars needs to water bath for 15 minutes, but it's okay if we do it for 25 minutes. Always want to go to the timer that's the longest and not the shortest. The quarts are going to take 25, the pints will take 15, but we'll do them both at 25 minutes. So we're at a standstill until this finishes water bathing for 25 minutes. Then we'll turn the stove off. We'll reheat our apples before we're ready to put them in there. But I do have all the dishes washed So I have a clean sink. So happy. So we let them boil for 25 minutes. We've had the burner off for well over 20 minutes, so it's time to take these out. So there's one. Right, so they are all out of the canner. I do have something I have to do really quick. So the rest of the apples and the applesauce are going to have to wait till later this evening, but we'll get them all done. So far we have 9 quarts of apple pie filling. It smells so good in here. All right, so let me go do what I gotta do. We'll be right back to finish this apple season. Okay, family, I have the last bit of the apple pie filling in jars in the pot on the stove. Countertop roaster turned off. Got the stick blender. I'm just going to go ahead and blend this. If we have chunks in here, that's going to be okay. All right, that looks good. I forgot to taste it. Okay. We're not adding no sugar. It is perfect. So we're going to go to a 1-inch headspace, which is that bottom ring on the jars. All right, so if you guessed how many quarts of apple pie filling we got, if you don't mind, go ahead and guess how many pints of applesauce we'll get. I'm very curious to see who would get this right. And I'm hoping to get it all in the same canner as that apple pie filling. Again, we need a debubble. Make sure we're still at that 1-inch headspace. This one needs just a tad bit more. Perfect. Oop, I forgot a jar. Let me go ahead and fill that one up too. What is your favorite recipe for applesauce? I have an applesauce cake recipe. If I can find that video, I'll put a link right there. Family, it is so good. All right, we got a paper towel with some vinegar. Let's give it a good wipe. Washed and rinsed 4-jar lids. Rings, fingertip tight. And now we're going to go ahead and put them in the pot. Now, because we have both quart size apple pie filling and pint size applesauce, we are going to can those by pint time, and that's 25 minutes. All right, let's continue filling up jars. Now, when you're debubbling, you don't want to stir it, because that will actually add bubbles. You just want to go up and down and around. Perfect. We had some clean and rinse 4-jar lids going on. We're going to put these 4 in the canner. Okay, all the jars are in there. We'll put the lid on, crank it up to a medium high, and that's going to be the perfect amount of time for us to get it up to a boil for 25 minutes, turn the stove off, let it cool for a bit, remove everything, and then we'll do a final count. In the meantime, I can get all these dishes done and get this kitchen reset. We are done. 40 pounds of apples, done. So what was your guess? I'm going to tell you right now. We have 10 quarts and 1 pint of apple pie filling. And we have 9 pints of applesauce. Plus, we've got apple cider vinegar right here. Beautiful day, done. The kitchen is clean, except for the 32 quart stock pot, which I need to drain and wash that, put that back in the pantry. But we are done. I ate 2 apples raw as a snack, plus I put a couple in the refrigerator for us to have as raw apples. But we are completely done. Applesauce, apple pie filling, done. I just took these out, and so far they've sealed. Perfect. The ones we took out earlier are all sealed. The ones we just took out are still in the process of sealing. Tomorrow I'll take the rings off, give them a good scrub, and put them on the pantry shelf. So happy. If you like videos like this, please give it a thumbs up. And while you're at it, please subscribe. I will love to have you part of the Grammy family. If you want to see the Azure haul, I'll put a link right there where we bought these apples last week, and we got them all processed, we got them all canned. We are so happy. And the kitchen is clean. Right over here, you're going to see 2 videos. Go check those out to the next upload. And please subscribe. Until next time, y'all have a blessed day. Bye, family.